Welcome in, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. As everyone's joining in, we're just taking a quick poll. Wanted to see what LaunchPoint integrations you're using now. You may be using LinkedIn or Google or Facebook or none of them. I know we are using the LinkedIn lead gen and that is it. What about you, Jasmine?
We are currently using LinkedIn.
Nice. Grant, what about you?
LinkedIn, I think Facebook we've used, but we're not connected to Google, ironically.
And did you work for Google?
Well, you know, there's very strict restrictions on PII and yeah.
Gotcha.
I think we do use things, but we bring them in via list uploads and stuff.
Gotcha. Oh, somebody just messaged me. There's a second Zoom meeting in the join virtual event here. And oh, it's in the calendar. Oh, crap. Okay. I definitely messed up the Zoom meeting. Let me push this to Slack at least. Christine, if I give you a link, can you message the people who are in that Zoom and tell them to join this one?
Yeah, I can actually hop in and rejoin.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Fun.
I don't know what I did, but you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna also post this.
Get it together, Amy. Get it together.
Oh, if you're having trouble joining.
And say we fire you, but you're not getting paid. So thanks for just getting us this far.
Here's the current link.
Now there's no more purple swag. I don't even know what Adobe would give you.
I have a red shirt on. It's a champion shirt. It's not a mug shirt, but you know,
I mean, it's not as cool as like purple shoes that somebody might have. I don't know.
Purple shoes, purple backpack. JD, are you wearing a Marketo shirt right now?
I'm not,
Aw.
but I'll just wear my little hand in the back.
There we go.
Amazing.
I'm always counting on
Hi,
you, JD, to rep the
everybody.
purple. Always.
You know, it's a way of life.
No, they're slowly.
I just knocked a whole bunch of stuff off my desk right now. Grabbing that.
I love that. I love that hand. Do you ever use that to like make a point in meetings?
I don't. Just my only on my Marketo renewal meetings.
That's great. Ooh, a visor. I want one of those.
Doesn't work with a headset.
No, it doesn't. I'm about the visors. We're gonna give people another minute. I really apologize, everybody. I don't know what I did wrong with the Zoom link, but double check that next time. Jasmine will put that in our go live.
Marketing ops is hard, right?
Yeah, can you tell I don't do campaign ops anymore? That is, you know, far outside my current wheelhouse. And for those of y'all who are just joining, please feel free to take our poll so we can have a good idea of, you know, what LaunchPoint connectors you are currently using. I will let me, there we go. Oopsies. Everyone. Me to everyone. Looks like okay, we've got, so it looks like, keeps on moving. I love it. People, please keep taking that, take that poll. It's always fun. And for those of you who've not attended a SFMUG before, we use Slido both for opening polls and then also for Q&A. So I love conversation in the chat. It's always really fun to have conversations going during the presentation. But if you have specific questions, please pop them into Slido. Makes it so much easier at the end for us to review questions. And you can also upvote questions. So if there's something that somebody else asks and you think it's really interesting, you can upvote it so you can make sure that that it gets answered. Okay, So we are just about 9 minutes after the hour, and I think it is time to get started. This is being recorded, so if anybody misses anything, we can certainly they can watch the recording. Okay, I'm gonna switch to sharing this, and we're gonna go to the beginning, and we're going to present. Okay, everybody can see my slides. Thank you. So welcome to SFMUG. My name is Amy Goldfine. I'm the head of marketing operations at Iterable. My pronouns are she, her, and I am based out of sunny Marin County, California. I'm very excited to introduce my brand new co-leader, Jasmine Chung. Jasmine, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jasmine, as Amy mentioned, she, her as well. And I am the director of demand generation currently at OpenPrice. Really excited to join Amy and SFMUG on getting this all built and created for everyone to share knowledge and enjoy the SFMUG.
We're very excited to have you. Jasmine's brought a lot of great stuff to SFMUG, including this really cool branding. Also, it was her idea to have quarterly themes, which I love. And our theme this quarter is scaling up. So quick housekeeping, this is a safe space, so no self-promotion, don't contact people without their consent, and don't share people's information and use cases without their consent. We do have a Slack, so if you are not in that Slack, please send a chat to me with your email address and we will send you an invitation. It's a great way to communicate with everybody and keep in touch. And if you need to re-up your Adobe certification or are not yet certified, there are currently 2 exams. These slides will be shared out, so you do not need to memorize this, but they are keeping the former MCE exam through the end of the year, and they've already launched a new exam designed by Marketo champions. And Jasmine, now that I think about it, I may have taken over the slides that you were supposed to present. I apologize. I'm going to hand over to you now.
No worries. As Amy mentioned, we are using Slido, and the code is right here for our polls in the beginning and the question. And as she also mentioned, you could upvote any questions that may resonate with yours. And with that, here's Brooke.
All right, I'm going to let Brooke share her own slides. So she doesn't have to keep asking me to advance. Thank you so much for joining us. Brooke Bartos, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Jasmine. Hi, everyone. I am Brooke Bartos. I'm a Marketo user since 2014. So I've been doing this for just a little bit now. 4-time Marketo champion. I actually lead 2 of the other users groups, Chicago and the Microsoft Dynamics virtual users group. So some of you I've seen around, but if you're ever out there looking for a group to join, feel free to pop in. Our sessions are always open and we always welcome folks to join us as well. As far as my background, so I came from the consulting world. I spent about 3 years at an agency called Walker Sands in Chicago that specialized in digital marketing and demand gen. And I led the marketing operations function there. So a lot of the work that I've done in the last couple of years was on the consulting side for B2B SaaS and tech companies, and sitting side by side with content teams and demand gen teams to build out a cohesive strategy that connected a lot of these platforms and strategies together. And so we'll chat through some of those today. I've got some use cases and things to walk you through. Outside of the work stuff, though, I am the mom of a 5-year-old wildling who started kindergarten this year. So if you joined me on previous meetings over the course of the last 18 months, she's usually been a fixture in the background, but she is back at kindergarten now. So for today, as I mentioned, we're going to go over a little bit about the different connectors, how to use them, and how to integrate those into some of your campaigns within Marketo. We'll talk a bit about the platforms themselves, some of the different ad types that you have available, how to build audiences and connect those between systems, not only to create new audiences, but to modify existing audiences. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the lead capturing process and how that ties into reporting and analytics. There's some really cool, fun things that we did at the agency to help with multi-touch attribution tracking, firing information in Google Analytics when it's not native, that we'll walk through today. So when we talk a little bit about demand gen and how that ties in with marketing operations, a lot of times it feels a little more like random acts of marketing. Taking a budget, hey, we're going to go buy some ads on LinkedIn or Google, put things on the Google Display Network, but it may not tie in so well with the rest of what we've got going on with our email nurture programs or invitations that we're sending out, or maybe it's onboarding nurtures or, pausing people where they are in different points of the sales cycle. And so as marketing ops and marketing automation managers, there's a lot that we can do to stop the random acts of marketing. And so a lot of that ties in with LaunchPoint and the AdBridge connectors. They're free, they're native, they're out of the box, and they're really there to help eliminate some of those manual processes that come from downloading spreadsheets, importing them, bringing them over. But they don't just help us build audiences better, they help us to use our spend more wisely. Briefly, to touch on those, they're located in the admin section under LaunchPoint. One thing to note with these, if you're connecting these for the first time, you do have to be an admin on both systems. And in some cases, even though LinkedIn, for example, it is a LinkedIn Match Audiences or a LinkedIn Lead Gen, they connect a little bit differently. So the thing to note here is if you are an admin on accounts other than your business account, maybe it's your Backstreet Boys fan club, maybe it's the local, cat cafe that you work part-time at. Know that when you connect these, if you are connecting them through LaunchPoint, everyone else in your organization is going to have access and be able to see that. For the LinkedIn side, when you're making that connection initially is where you'll choose which account. So it's a little bit easier. There's a little less visibility. If you're going the matched audiences route, you actually pick which account you're sending those audiences to when you push a list. So just be prepared for that information to be exposed. If you are on the agency side, note that this can also be a concern if you're managing multiple client accounts. So in that case, you may want different people from your organization managing different LinkedIn connections there. Now, when we talk about some of the different ads that are over there, you'll hear a lot of different things coming around from the demand gen side, whether they're talking about image ads, video ads have become a new one. You can scroll through your LinkedIn feed now and see a ton of those. Carousel ads, those are often what you'll see when you're getting a shopping ad where you can scroll through and pick different things. But some of the more common ones too recently in the content and digital space are the lead gen forms. It's where you can actually fill out a form right on your social media site. It pre-populates with your information and you can get the content right there. And so those are some of the things that you'll see. Now, of course, the whole point of all of this, right, is to actually sit down with your demand gen managers and have a conversation about what does your demand gen strategy look like? How does some of the campaigns that they're doing right now tie in with some of the work that you're doing? This is, marketing and marketing alignment, not even keeping the sales piece in the conversation yet. But within marketing, what we're doing, the email nurtures that we're building out, the follow-up communications should tie in with that demand gen strategy. And so we should be a part of those conversations looking down the road and saying, hey, what are our plans for the next quarter? How can we support this? What are some of the audiences or verticals or new markets that we might be going after? And how do we make sure that we can take the information, behavioral or audience-based information coming from Salesforce, sales cycle information, and feed that back to our demand gen teams? By helping them spend their money a little bit better, that looks good for the entire marketing team. It's not just a win for demand gen, it's a win for all of us. And so with all of those different ad types, when we're talking to the team about, who are they going after? What are we trying to do with our ads? We're going to want to consider how that falls across the funnel as well. So for some of these, the audience building, we may have people that we have gone after. Maybe we sponsored a trade show. Maybe we've started to build an audience, or maybe we have people that are engaged to a certain point within our instance that we're looking to continue to market to. We can also take that information and expand our top of funnel coverage by creating lookalike audiences off of that information. That could even be current customer data. So who has similar profiles, similar job titles, industries, company sizes, revenue numbers that might help us build an audience for that top of funnel area. As we go a little bit further down in the middle of the funnel, maybe this is where we're already doing some of our email nurturing, doing a little bit of outreach and trying to communicate with some of these audiences. But this is a great place to come in with things like remarketing or deepening our ad engagement with something like a LinkedIn InMail or now sponsored messaging, to be able to really try to strengthen that communication, push them a little bit closer to having that conversation with a sales rep, whether that's scheduling a demo, taking a tour, whatever the case may be. But we also want to be cognizant of what we have in our system already and how we can use that for exclusion lists. So if somebody's already taken an action, or maybe they converted and became a customer, it doesn't make sense for us to continue to spend our ad money trying to get in front of them when they've already taken those actions. We might also want to be able to exclude things like competitors or internal employees, and we have the ability to push lists around to be able to make sure that all of that aligns the same way we would do for our email communications. So when you think about that audience building, the audience builders, so your LinkedIn matched audiences, Google customer match, or Facebook customer audiences, give you the ability to create lists in Marketo, either smart or static lists, so that you can push those over and keep them in sync. That way you can align your messaging across all of your channels so that if you're promoting one piece of content and maybe in your nurture, the next piece of content, you can follow that up in your ad platforms and keep those in sync. As I mentioned, you can also use that to connect and find audiences that look like existing customers. So if you're looking to expand your reach, that can be a really important key in that. It's also very helpful in the sense that when it comes to creating audiences, most of these ad platforms have a minimum audience that you're required to have to run a campaign. So if you have a group of people that are in a certain place in your funnel that you're wanting to target, maybe you've got 250 people, but you need 300 to run a campaign, you could use something like a lookalike audience to pull in people that have similar profiles, but be able to hit that campaign audience number to be able to run that program. And so once you've got these built out, your AdBridge icon is at the bottom of your list. Once you've built it, it kind of looks like a little target there. And then you identify the audience that you're going to push that over to. So it's a really simple process. You can use all of your same smart list criteria and filters that you like in Marketo and create that and send it over. Now, as I mentioned, once you push it into a platform, this is where you're going to pick what the ad account is. Again, if you're in consulting, you're going to expose all of your client names right here, or potentially show everybody else in your organization what you're doing. But when you are doing this from a smart list, these are the options that you have here. So it's a single kind of push-pull relationship there. It's a one-time deal, so to speak. From the LinkedIn side, it's going to look a little bit like this. Those audiences are going to come over and it's going to start to do a match. It's going to look for the information that you sent over and start to build that list. It'll give you a match rate, how many people they were able to match based on the info you sent. But note that it does take about 24 hours for this to populate. So if you do have something that this is a real-time thing, you need to think about that a little bit more in advance, because the time that it takes to run those matches and build those audiences, it does take just a little bit. So be prepared for that. But once you have those in, as you can see along the top within LinkedIn, you have the ability to use that audience as is, or leverage that lookalike functionality to expand that audience if you know that it hasn't hit your criteria. And of course, in keeping you from hitting the wrong audience, you're going to want to continue to update that information on a regular basis. So for example, if you've got company one, they're getting ready to promote a webinar. You're going to send out some emails, maybe build out some LinkedIn ads, some things on Facebook or the Google Display Network saying, hey, we want you to register today for our webinar, right? So you come across that, you fill out the form and you register, right? You've taken that action. Awesome. except you're continuing to get the same emails and the same ads and the same emails and the same ads until that webinar has run. And then maybe you start seeing ads that say, watch the replay. All this time, organization one here has been spending money to target you and get in front of you. Now with organization two, your MOPS team has been involved along the way. They've been working with the demand gen team to say, hey, you know what, how can we add value to this conversation? How can we nurture these people? And how can we get them ready for a conversation at the end of this? So when you converted and you filled out that form, the content changed. You got a different email and a different set of ads giving you a self-assessment to identify what some of the needs are within your organization or weak points that that webinar is going to speak to. Okay, well, now we know what our own challenges are and how this organization might be able to help fix them. Might be a little bit more engaged in that webinar and excited to attend in real time. Well, then they might follow that up with a tips sheet. What are some of the common problems and how to solve them? Oh, now we need to start thinking about organizational change and how we're going to make modifications to what we're doing based on the information that we're learning. Well, then when we watch that webinar and we get hit with that information requesting a demo, we've had the opportunity to self-identify and we've been able to get value throughout the entire duration of that relationship. The organization that was putting the money behind those ads and putting new content in front of us and spending the time building emails and nurtures now has an audience that's prepared to have those conversations and doesn't now have to go through a whole nother nurture stream to try to get value and be able to set up that sell for the conversation. And so all along this way, certainly there's the way to do it with smart lists where you can go in and say, I want to see all the people who have registered and remove them. But back in January of this year, Marketo made an update creating continuous audience sync. This used to be something that you had to do as a workaround using a middleware like a Marketo or a Zapier, but it is now available using static lists only. This is the key to this, but where you can actually set your audience to update in real time. And so now your registration triggers on your webinar, for example, could add or remove somebody to a list that could be then pushed back to the ad platform. So if you register for a webinar, we want to put you on a list that's going to be a suppression or an exclusion list in those ad platforms. We know you've registered. We no longer want to advertise, register for the webinar. We'll pull you from that audience. That same static list, we can use that to say, okay, now we're going to push this into this new campaign and put some new content in front of you. It's very, very easy to use, very simple to set up. It's the same process. You just choose that from the static list that it's a continuous, you want to keep this in sync and you'll be set up and ready to go. And so this is what that looks like with the add or remove and enable continuous. Super easy, efficient change. Big win there. This is also where the continuous sync comes into play for your lead nurture campaigns. This was a big thing that we did a lot at the agency, and I've actually pulled in a client example here. This was a client who sold a sales tech SaaS plugin for Salesforce. And what we did is, we had our audiences that we were going out and targeting using our lookalike audience features. So whether that was across Google or LinkedIn, whatever the case may be, we had that as our entry point to our nurture, that they clicked on an ad, filled out a form, and they got their first piece of content, that white paper, 5 strategies for setting aggressive but attainable sales targets. And then we dropped them into an email nurture. Of course, with an email nurture, the goal was to try to get them to engage, to become score qualified. We passed them over to a seller. Our score model required that they had typically 2 to 3 pieces of content engagement to hit that threshold. And we did have some demographic criteria in there as well. But our target was that by the time they got the 4th email, they should have engaged enough to be score qualified that we would either send them what was a seemingly personalized or templatized email, something like an outreach sequence, whatever the case may be. But if they hadn't, we actually took this opportunity to push them back into a remarketing list and put some of that later stage funnel content in front of them. The reason being, maybe these people, we were able to get in front of them in social media. Maybe email is not their preferred method of communication. Maybe they had spam blockers. Maybe they just weren't checking it. We never really knew the reason, right? But we didn't want to lose the opportunity to continue to engage somebody who is potentially interested. So by putting them on a remarketing list with some later stage content that connected back to what they've already seen and done, we were able to re-engage them and try to bring them back in. And so this is where we would have a continuous audience sync tied into our engagement programs, so that if people hadn't reached that point, we could push them over and be able to leverage that information within our ad platforms and go from there. One thing to note with all of these, UTM parameters are going to be hugely important with your ads and tracking where your campaign spend and conversions are coming from. Those can also be used for retargeting later. If you're not using UTMs, strongly suggest those. And then just like anything else, with our emails, our subject lines, our header images, we want to do the same thing with our ads and keep them simple and relevant, so that if we are putting an ad in front of somebody, we want the landing page that they go to be connected to the messaging that they saw at the beginning. This is not a bait and switch. We want them to convert, and we want to keep our landing pages simple. We have one action that they want them to take. We don't want to push them into something that's analysis paralysis and they get over there and have no idea what to do and they leave. So you'll want to keep that in mind. Now, there's been an elevation beyond just the traditional image ads and video ads that a lot of these platforms now offer, which is a lead capture functionality. We talked a little bit about lead gen forms. Specifically, I saw most of us here are using LinkedIn, but it's become something that has been used not only for content, but for webinar registrations, for conference registrations. And it's really an easy way to get in front of the audience where they are and try to get that conversion. Instead of going to a landing page where you're asking somebody to fill out a form, you're able to pre-populate that information with what's there in LinkedIn or Facebook, whichever you're using there. You've taken away a little bit of that friction that comes in with asking somebody to fill out 15 fields or whatever the case may be. A couple of things though with it, you do have up to 12 fields that you can use, but the most important is that this evolved from where it started. There are now the availabilities of custom questions or custom checkboxes. These are very important when it comes to things like collecting explicit consent. When these were first rolled out, that was not an option. And so for a lot of folks who were targeting outside of the US, LinkedIn lead gen forms weren't going to work for them because they couldn't get that consent. Now that is a possibility and you can leverage that. You would have the same privacy policy communications, consents there on your LinkedIn form, just as you would your Marketo form. And so that's where, if you are building this out for the first time, sitting with your demand gen team, you are the stewards of the data that comes into your Marketo system. So it will be important for you to take part in that and make sure that those consent confirmations are coming in and are mapped appropriately in your Marketo system, so that if you do have things like double opt-in consent that needs to be collected, or if you have workflows in Marketo that note where and how that consent was collected, to make sure that those are stamped appropriately. You can also customize the thank you messages that happen on conversion. So if you do that, link back to your website. Try to get some of that traffic sent over there, but make sure to use UTM parameters so you know that that came from a lead gen forms conversion. The reason I want to call these out specifically is if you're using LinkedIn ads and not using lead gen forms, you are missing a tremendous opportunity. With us at the agency, we were working with our clients and we were regularly seeing conversion rates of more than 3x with lead gen forms over what their lead ads were. I was doing a little bit of poking across the internet just to see, is that, what we saw, is that normal? Were we some sort of a fluke? Were we doing something that somebody else wasn't? And I kept seeing the same things over and over again, that people were seeing 3 to 4x the conversion rates and the improvement in ad spend by focusing on things like lead gen forms, because you've taken away that friction and made it easy on your audience. So again, if you're not using this, I would highly suggest calling up your demand gen team members and saying, hey, I'd love to try this out. Let's do an A/B test. Let's pilot this next to our ads and see what this looks like. and take a look at what the conversion rates look like for you. Now, when you are building this out, the default in LinkedIn is simply email, which is typically personal email. Most people, that's how they set up their LinkedIn, so that when you move account or move companies, your account goes with you. And excuse me, I have to cough for a moment. All right, sorry about that. It is default for it to be the personal email. So you do have the ability within LinkedIn, as you're building your forms, to set that field to be business email. You'll want to do that within Marketo, but you can also have both of these fields mapped to the same Marketo field, which is nice. The custom fields and checkboxes. So this is the part where you're really going to need to work with that team to identify what those fields look like in LinkedIn, what they're called, where you're collecting consent, and how you're going to map that back and forth, so that you have those there. You have the ability to map those workflows, score these leads, or put them through your consent programs, and be ready to go. The one I did want to note here is person source. If you do use an operational program to control person source within Marketo, you're going to want to make a change here, because LinkedIn by default is going to push these people in with a person source of LinkedIn lead gen, which may not be in line with what you have for the rest of your source structure. You may just have LinkedIn, and you may want to have LinkedIn lead gen as your lead source detail. So that may be one change that you might need to be aware of that would happen on the Marketo side in your operational programs. But that is something to be aware of as a part of that sync. Now, another thing with this that you can also do, the custom fields, you could use those to put in things like your UTM parameters and have those as hidden fields on your LinkedIn forms. However, when it comes to actually building and scaling that and the amount of custom fields that you have available on a LinkedIn form, I've often found that to be something to be better populated using flow steps on a Marketo Smart Campaign after the fact. But you do have the option to do that. So just to give you a look at what this actually looks like in LinkedIn, it is very similar to any other form builder where you're going to have your information there. Your offer headline is kind of like your subject line or ad copy with your details. But the privacy policy and privacy text that you have here should map what you have on your website for your Marketo forms. We do want to try to make this information consistent. We want to make the experience feel consistent so that if they go over to your website, it's not something totally different, and link out to that privacy policy from here. And then, of course, as I mentioned, this is where you can build out the custom fields and custom questions and follow up with your thank you message so that you've got that information there and ready to go. But then when you actually see it from the ad site, it's going to look a little bit like this. We've probably all seen them in our LinkedIn feeds. But what we've done now is we put an ad out there to send somebody to this white paper, this piece of content, where they just have to click the download button. We've asked for their work email because that's not the default, a phone number and company size. So there's our 3 custom questions there. And then once they hit submit, that information is going to automatically be passed back to Marketo for us to action on. Now, when it comes to the Marketo side, one item of note here is that these forms will not appear as selections in your Marketo triggers until a test record has been pushed. So you'll need to work with your demand gen manager when they build these out and say, hey, yep, can you push a test record? Great. Now I can see that and build out the workflows that will follow with this. There are, of course, some pros and cons to this. By not going to your website, you're losing a little bit of that brand equity that comes with having your fully branded domain, your website, your imagery, your graphics. You're keeping it very simple where you just have what's on your ad and the content that you're downloading to. You're also losing the site traffic. Your conversion is happening off-site. That's where you really want to make sure that you've got some compelling thank you copy and a link back to your website where you can try to push people over to there. You're also restricted a little bit more in terms of your ad specs for your LinkedIn lead gen forms. So you do have those limits of your custom fields and custom checkboxes, limits to your headline length, that sort of thing. Whereas when you're using ads and you're pushing to a landing page, your landing page is owned by you and it's free reign. So when it comes to the tracking and reporting, as you can see from the triggers on the left, this is where I mentioned your LinkedIn lead gen form will not appear as an option in this dropdown until that test record is pulled through. But once it's there, you do have the ability to trigger off of course, the lead gen form name, but you can go deeper with the campaign name in LinkedIn, the account name, the creative name. You can get very specific and very detailed with this. For me, I typically use one form per piece of content, even though that may be used for different audiences. And I'll break my programs out accordingly. You can also have, it's similar to global forms, right? Where you have one form that can be used for multiple campaigns, multiple audiences, could even be used for multiple pieces of content. I don't recommend that. It's a lot easier to have a single form for a single piece of content and keep perhaps your regions separate if you have different privacy language, for example, that would need to be specific to each different region. But then all of this can be connected right back to your Salesforce instance. When I connect mine, I typically will create the initial campaign sync with Salesforce, and then I'll actually disconnect the native connector and put it into a flow step. As you can see in mine here, I actually populate the UTM parameters via flow step. I want that information to be updated first before this person is synced to Salesforce, because I have campaigns on Salesforce listening for information such as UTM parameter changes, and then Apex pushing that up onto my campaign member object for attribution. So if you do have any kind of advanced attribution and analytics platforms, you'll want to be considerate of how those function and where you put that, but using your Salesforce sync as a flow step lets you have a little bit more control in that process. Now, one thing I also typically add on to this, it's not in this screenshot here, but I will also typically have a landing page here. One of the things that I did a lot with the agency and our clients was to have an interstitial page. What this did was when someone filled out a form, a LinkedIn lead gen form, we actually, instead of sending them directly to the PDF, we were passing them through a Marketo landing page first. An interstitial page. This was giving us the ability to fire Google Tag Manager, any other tags that we wanted to fire, like Facebook, firing Munchkin, anything like that that we wanted to have for analytics and attribution and being able to build these remarketing audiences elsewhere. And it fires just for a fraction of a second. Just long enough, you see a white page and it says redirecting to, and then the asset URL, and then boom, off they were right to the PDF, just like they would have been, had they clicked right through it, but not enough that it's a disruption. So it was key for us to be a part of the customer experience there, that it was seamless and didn't feel like it was, something unusual. But what it did was it gave us the Google Analytics page views, where we could see who had hit this and did they go on to do things on site. We could fire Munchkin, we could score them, we could connect this activity back to their person record that they had hit this page. And it gave us a lot more capabilities beyond just the native LinkedIn conversion tracking. So you can see what I've got here. I will say, if you go onto the Marketing Nation community page, there's actually some script in there from Sanford that does essentially this exact same thing. So you can grab that, and with just a little bit of dev skills, either yourself or if you have a developer on your team that can help with that, implement those scripts and try that out. So we did do that typically for our lead gen forms. We also did this as a side note for our organic social media. If we were driving to, for example, an article where we were mentioned on Forbes or something like that, where we wanted to promote that, but it was linking to someone else's property, we would push them through this before pushing them over to that third-party site so that we had that cookie and that tracking. Now, when it comes to Google Ads There are a couple of things that are a little bit different with Google than the others. Google has some attribution settings that you can put in place that will tie in with your Google Ads account and can be connected with Google Analytics. So those are just a little bit different when you do those setups and how they define the attribution. I'm not going to go too far into detail. I have put some information in the appendix on these on how to actually make these connections, as well as some information from Courtney Grimes on how to connect Google Ads and Google Analytics, so that if you don't have those things in place, you can do that. But those conversions, as they come in, can also be brought into your revenue cycle modeler. So depending on what platforms you have connected, you can connect those conversion points to where they might fall in terms of your life cycle stages, and what those might look like to track those offline conversions. But when you tie all of this together, the biggest thing is that this information and communicating with your demand gen team really helps to make sure that what we're putting in front of our audience, not just in terms of email, but across all of our web properties, from the website, from social media, landing pages, that all of those messages are in line and adding value to the entire customer experience along the way, both for our existing customers and our net new product prospects who might be visiting us for the first time. As stewards of this marketing data and our Marketo admins responsible for its use, remember that only you can prevent random acts of marketing. Thanks, everyone. I know we've got a couple of questions, I think, in the chat box, but Amy, I think you've been managing questions a little bit, so I'll
so
turn it over to you.
Yeah, why don't you stop sharing? Thank you so much, Brooke. That was super interesting. I certainly learned a lot, and I have taken away a lot of things that I need to talk to my demand gen and paid team about. I'm going to go ahead and share the Slido, but now I have to remember how to do this properly. Okay, yeah, all right, I was doing that properly. All right, share my screen. Okay, everybody can see Slido, yes? Okay. So here's, oh, I just cleared out a question. Why? Let me go back. Okay, actually, even though I apparently accidentally cleared out a question, I remember the question. Brooke, can you clarify a little bit about the lead source and the fact that like it sends over a default lead source? How do you get around that, especially if you have your lead source set as a field that doesn't get overwritten? Do you not sync the lead source field? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's going to come in. The thing with it is when you have your person source operationalized in Marketo, it should be set to block updates coming from places. Basically, if you're using it as original lead source, it should be set so that once that value is there, that it is not overwritten by any source, unless for some reason you choose to lift that temporarily to make some system updates. So if you have that set where it is blocked, it should not update anyone already. If it is someone that's coming in for the first time, it will populate that value. And so you will need to use a smart campaign to align that to the rest of the values that you have.
But but that means you have to not block updates from smart campaigns, right?
It's a little bit of a tricky thing with that. And in some cases, yeah, you do have to lift that a little bit. The other thing too, though, is where it can get a little bit hairy is if you do have people that exist in your Marketo system already, LinkedIn is not able to look back across that.
Okay.
And so LinkedIn will create these people as a duplicate. Marketo will auto merge them. The LinkedIn source part will go away.
Interesting.
But if you are, if you do want to, of course, track these conversions and where people are coming in, this is where it's very important to make sure that you do have campaigns that you're adding people to, or Marketo programs, so that you have those conversions tracked. I also have always pushed those just onto static lists as a redundant backup step. But with the update of the person source thing, that could be something that you do at a periodic time frame. It could be done with a webhook. It could be done with smart campaigns if you do choose to allow it to update person source based on an API.
But do you have to have person source synced from LinkedIn?
It will do it automatically.
Interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. I should look into that.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful. Okay. I'm not gonna pin my own question. This is a great question. Any recommendations for Facebook integration when default LaunchPoint integration is not an option?
Yeah, so I've seen some really interesting things done with Facebook using middleware connectors. So with like a Zapier or Marketo, depending on what it is that you're trying to do with Facebook, because it can give you a little bit more flexibility that way. Matthias, are you thinking in terms of matched audiences in this case, or the lead gen form connection?
You can come off mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
hey.
Yep, basically for both. I mean, the key challenge is that when you have multiple accounts that you need to connect, but it's like having one user on all accounts, it's basically not an option. So how to tie all that together?
Yeah, one thing that we used to do, especially prior to the continuous audience sync, was to use Zapier as a middleware and have Google Sheets actually in the middle. So we would have, for example, add platform to Zapier to Google Sheets to Zapier to Marketo. And that way we could take all of that data and push it to a Google Sheet or different Google Sheets, but then have listeners there for when people were added to the Google Sheets, then sync them to Marketo. And we could create different workflows based on that information or what Google Sheet we push them through. But that way we could have multiple accounts that we're feeding through a little bit differently. You didn't have that security vulnerability of being able to see the different account names or potentially push people to the wrong place that way. And that worked really, really well for us.
All right, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Brooke.
Yep.
Okay. Next question from Steve. I know this is a Marketo focused presentation, but what about using a CDP for orchestration? Are there any big pros or cons to using Marketo versus a CDP? Great question.
Yeah. If you're using a CDP, that's awesome. It's a great place to be able to help aggregate that data and have a little bit more control over it there. I think that's a big question around how many people even are using a CDP right now. I know that's newer for a lot of folks. And if you don't have a CDP or, a data warehouse or a data lake that you're pumping things into, and it's really just your ad accounts and Marketo, these LaunchPoint connectors just provide an opportunity to make that a little bit easier and remove some of the manual lift that comes with spreadsheets. If you have a CDP that can do that, all the better, because that's going to give you much more power with that data to be able to pull that into like your BI tools or push that across to other platforms across your overall customer experience. You'll have a lot more flexibility that way.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a great synopsis. Okay. This is my question. If someone's not using any of these integrations, what's the best place to start, especially if you're, a small team and you don't have a lot of bandwidth? What's the easiest to set up, or what's the best, or what has like the, most bang for your buck?
Yeah, good question. I think the easiest one that I have found for getting started for the first time, if you're in B2B, typically LinkedIn is where most of your audience is going to be and where it's easiest to find them. Facebook, a lot of people don't put their company information there. They don't have their company email addresses. And so you're not going to usually see the strongest result there if you're in B2B. When it comes to LinkedIn, I think the matched audiences is probably the easiest to set up because it's what people are most familiar with or most comfortable with is your traditional ads, because it's similar to the Google Display Network, and a lot of people have used that as well. But the ROI piece, I think in B2B, hands down, the biggest ROI I've seen has been on the LinkedIn lead gen forms. Both in my own personal experience now in-house, but also working with a variety of clients and being able to see some of their ads go head to head. ads versus lead gen forms. The lead gen forms, I definitely feel like I saw the most ROI time and time again. And so if you do try any one of these things, I think that would be the first place that I would recommend starting, would be to sit down with your demand gen manager and, you know, see if we've got the spend to be able to do this and give it a try and figure out that first form, build that out and run it as a test pilot and see what those results look like. See if you're getting the kind of conversions and, you know, hitting the audience that you're looking to hit.
Thanks. That really makes sense. I've totally seen the ROI of the LinkedIn lead gen form. There's definitely like those gotchas you talked about, especially the fact that you have to send a test form through in order for that to show up as the trigger. Filled out LinkedIn lead gen form is this. So I definitely had the experience where like I really had to set up a really clear process with the DG team. You do this, I do this, then I tell you it's live. But you know, once we got that documentation down, it's, you know, pretty straightforward to set up. And it's like the conversions are just, you know, and also I think like being able to pull, you know, you talked about custom questions, but being able to pull in like standard fields, right? They don't have to put in their first name, last name, all that information because it's just pulled in from LinkedIn. And then it's probably actually better form fills because people don't generally mess up spelling their name on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, and it's, if you also think about too, from a mobile perspective. If you've taken away asking somebody to fill out, you know, 5-10 fields on their phone, you've got a small field to work with.
Yeah.
And if instead the only field that we're asking for is something like work email, it's a lot easier for them to fill out one field and be registered for a webinar and they're done.
Totally.
And so by taking away those friction points, it does make it a lot easier for somebody to convert.
Yeah. Well, Brooke, thank you so much. This was such a great presentation. You know, one of the great things about doing these, you know, on Zoom is that we get to have people from, you know, all over the country, all over the world. So thank you for, you know, zooming in from Chicagoland. I'm going to hand it back over to Jasmine to wrap it up.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Brooke, so much for the wonderful presentation. I definitely learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did. Our next Scaling Up series is on November 10th on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific with our Marketo champion, Chloe. So please register. You'll receive an email from us soon, and we will definitely see you there. If anybody's hiring, if anybody's looking for a job, there's a Slack channel on the SFMUG that you're able to post, look, or recommend other folks. So please share the wealth and to your community and network. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. And thank you, Brooke and Amy, once again.
Yeah, and if anybody, we have a few minutes before the top of the hour. So if anybody is looking to hire somebody or is comfortable sharing that they're looking for a new job, you know, please feel free to come off of mute and, you know, promote that. Anybody looking for a new job at the end of the year or hiring somebody? All right. Well, glad to hear everybody seems gainfully employed. And again, thank you all so much. You know, thank you, Jasmine, for joining me as co-leader, and, you know, Brooke for presenting, and thank you all for joining. And of course, we will send out the recording and the slides later this week. Bye, y'all.
Have a great day.